Welcome everybody to JHS. I like this setup in here. We've been asking for something like this, so Governor Burgum, I'm hoping that you might just leave this here, if that'll work. It really would help us with building capacity. But in all seriousness, I need you to know that this talk is about these people up here on the screen. This is a fall 2018 picture of the Jamestown High School staff. We're excited to get our 2019 picture taken. But these are some of the best educators that I've ever known. These teachers know more about learning than any previous generation of teachers. They work hard, they care deeply about our students and their success. And they know not just how to improve, but why we need to improve. So like other schools, we've got a lot to celebrate in our data, our achievement, our graduation rates, our choice-ready students. Those things are all progressing, but we're not yet reaching our mission of learning for all. Another organization that struggled to meet their mission in the complexity of the early 21st century was the U.S. Army. And in 2003, I had the privilege of serving with the 141st Combat Engineer Battalion. And then 2 years later, I had the privilege of serving with the 817 Sapper Company. And as you can see, our technology changed a little from 2005 to 2007. But it wasn't the technology that made the difference in our missions. Now, don't get me wrong, it's always a good thing to be on the right side of a precision-guided missile. But it helps even more if your organization is nimble, if it's empowered, and if it learns organically. General Stanley McChrystal, in his book, Team of Teams, writes extensively about the organizational, the training, and the cultural shifts that the Army went through in this time frame. It's been said that the Army perpetually fights the previous war. And so it was in 2003 that we were trained to fight a fight that no longer existed in a world that was rapidly changing. General McChrystal recognized that how the Army was managed prevented them from adjusting and adapting in real time. The Army was constrained by an outdated mental model. That mental model had silos and parts and top-down decision-making. And so they stopped focusing on the parts and they started to focus more holistically. As you think about our industrial system of education, there's many parallels to that. And I believe it's time to shift our focus as well. It's true that teachers know more about learning than they ever have before. It's true that they work harder. It's true that we have more access to technology. And yet we find student performance is just not reaching that mission of learning for all. So just as our Army did, so too must our schools become living systems that adjust to the complexities that exist in learning. Let's look to the land. Let's look to our agricultural heritage as a metaphor of a living system. What does it mean for educators to focus on their school as a living system? Sir Kevin Robinson gave one of the most watched TED Talks in education's history. And in his book, The Element, he said this: "The gardener does not make the plant grow. The job of the gardener is to create optimal conditions." Robinson goes on to say that currently we treat education more like industrial manufacturing, when in fact it's more like farming. What are those optimal conditions for growth? First, we have to recognize that the growth of plants and human beings is way more complex than you might think or wish that it was. If you're a short-sighted farmer or educator, you might only worry about narrow outputs and narrow inputs. For example, how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium do I have, and what yield might I get? Or how many hours a day do I have students, and what are our reading and math scores? Those that have a deeper understanding of the optimal conditions for plants understand that there's biology in the soil, there's activity in the soil. Soil is not dead, soil is alive with millions of interactions. And if our education system is to create the optimal conditions for growth, then we too need to pay attention to our soil. Investing in soil takes time. It takes letting go of past practices. Above, you see two contrasted agricultural methods. On the right side of both pictures, you see management systems that look holistically at nature's interactions. Today's farmer knows what it takes to build healthy soils. But that's at odds with what we've done in the past. So just as our farmers will have to adopt new practices and let go of old ones to feed our living soils, so will our schools need to build a culture that supports holistic education. Many new practices in education are at odds with what we've done in the past. It's hard to shift a structure like the mindset of I close my door and teach to highly collaborative teams if your culture doesn't support it. But those in agriculture can't just change their practices. Rebuilding soil takes time and it takes courage. First, they have to shift their mental model. If we recognize that our soil is alive and we can't build or manage systems that are focused on just one aspect of development, then we have to pay attention to what the whole child needs and what we need from our future citizens. Certainty, the idea that our students can get their basic needs met with community-based systems to meet those needs. Diversity, how do we meet our students' needs for career exploration? An opportunity to show their strengths, an opportunity for them to appreciate the diversity of thought. Authenticity. We need to build systems that give our students authentic experiences, things that matter, because they need to know that they matter. Connection. Everybody needs to feel connected to their school and their community. And growth. We've got to ensure that our students understand that their growth is the result of effort and strategy and of our culture. Contribution, that this place, if they go to school here or they go to school there, is a place where they feel good about giving back to. So right where we sit today was once a vast expanse of diverse native species. These native species complemented one another. They protected each other. They protected the ground from erosion. They mitigated floods. They fed millions of roaming animals that were herded by predators in an interdependent ecosystem. This complex ecosystem built into a sustainable system over the course of about 12,000 years. And since none of us in this room look like we have 12,000 years to wait, we better take a few lessons from this ecosystem. We need diversity, we need to see those connections, and we need to grow together to thrive. Consider the same concept on a garden-sized scale with the idea of companion planting. This isn't a new idea, and according to Native American tradition or Native American legends, corn, bean, and squash are three inseparable sisters who only grow and thrive when planted together. We see what you see above ground is impressive. The beans using the corn as a trellis, the squash covering the ground, protecting from weeds and preserving precious moisture. But what's happening in the soil biology is equally as impressive. Millions of bacteria feeding on the nutrition of the corn and working with the beans to fix nitrogen for a future crop. Let's shift now to our role as educators and community members in the 21st century. If our role is to help the whole child, then we can't do it alone. We need our schools, our public services, and our community business and industry to be those three inseparable sisters, learning to grow and thrive together. We need to help ensure our students' basic needs of behavioral and physical health are met, safety and transportation. We need to ensure that our business and industry is partnering in learning with us, making our learning more authentic. And in our schools, we have to start encouraging interdisciplinary thinking, because that's the way the real-world problems work. These practices, when combined together, feed each other. They help our students grow their success skills and their academic skills at the same time. And they're good for our communities. A solution at High Tech High in San Diego they found was just to keep it simple. Encourage relationships that yield better results. High Tech High focuses on that simplicity by combining 2 or 3 subjects organically. They ensure that no teacher has more than 60 students to give feedback to at any given time. That's a structure. But they also have a culture that empowers their teachers to support students working on creative, authentic work. They focus on holistic learning. This school model supports the creativity, imagination, and growth, and the sense of purpose that we want for all our students. Managing holistically in agriculture is not an easy task. In schools, it's equally complex. In the background of this picture, you see what you think might be a simple system, a cover crop combination of hairy vetch and triticale. It's not the cover crops alone, but it's their relationship with each other and with the overall system that make them important. Because this combination complements one another, they're able to thrive together and feed the next crop as well. So if we step back in schools and we look at it as a living system instead of a factory, we can see those connections. Social studies and English, math, science, and CTE, arts, music, technology. But how do we build capacity to go from where we're at to a more natural system? We don't have all the answers yet, but we're certainly learning. We know that culture is as important to our school as soil is to agriculture. At JHS, we continue to work on our culture by promoting social-emotional learning, building capacity in our teachers and our students as leaders, starting new student groups, implementing professional learning communities, and thanks to some emerging leaders in our building, we're getting better at doing more team building and addressing cultural issues head on. Propinquity, it's a fun word, and basically it means where stuff is matters. At JHS, we build capacity when we take steps like changing our classroom locations, converting existing spaces to encourage teaming both within and across disciplines. In addition to what we do as a district for professional learning, we encourage growth in our school in 4 vital areas. We use this as an opportunity to build collective expertise. Nobody's working on all 4 of these at the same time, but our teams of teams come together and somebody's got the expertise. And we don't just learn for learning's sake. In everything we do, we have implementation and peer observation in mind. Even as we find success in this model, we're striving to get more personalized with our learning. 3/4 of our staff has been trained in project-based learning, and we've seen some pretty cool things come out of this. Our math department has started a mathematical thinking and design course, and this year, I believe we're one of the first in the states to pilot integrated math at the high school level. We implemented a school-wide day of service where our students are all out serving the community. Our CTE and PE courses are excellent examples of authentic learning, from building houses to working in clinics to responding to emergencies, repairing and remodeling cars, and starting this fall, farming the field behind our school. When you see our students displaying their passion and purpose through meaningful work, you have to have a lot of hope for our future. Technology is a powerful tool to accelerate learning, but we don't look to technology to replace learning in our classroom. Instead, we see it as a tool that can redefine learning. Over the course of a couple of years, we've built a makerspace staffed by student technicians that support teacher and student ideas when technology is the right tool for projects and entrepreneurship. Some educators believe that standards inhibit creativity, but we believe that standards in the hands of a well-educated, well-planned teacher are the best measure of student progress. As we look to our work with standards, it's important to know that they should be looked at as a floor and not a ceiling. And when our teachers collectively own their standards, they are a great tool for students' ownership and personalization. Flexible scheduling is also something we're working on to build capacity. Last year, we implemented a simple 30-minute flex period on Wednesday, and we employed an app that allows our students to self-select or to be selected by a teacher for that 30-minute period. During that time, we see a lot of opportunities for our students, from career presentations to projects to counseling groups and clubs, leisure and homework help. This time affords our students the opportunity to get what they need for just that period. But that's not where we're stopping. This also builds capacity in the technology, confidence in the technology, and practice in the idea of flexible scheduling for our organization. As General McChrystal recognized, his task force needed to be a learning, living, responsive, and nimble system. So we have organized into teams of teams, converting our faculty council into a site-based leadership team, implementing professional learning communities that intervene or enrich based on formative assessments. And we're encouraging that interdisciplinary teaming between courses. Each year we get a little bit better at being collaborative. But we have the same challenges that any school does. And in the last 100 years, our systems have helped us get better at a few narrow outcomes. If we implement practices in farming that encourage runoff, erosion, and floods, then we shouldn't be surprised when it happens with increasing frequency. If we implement practices in schools that focus narrowly on test scores, then we've lost the reason why we pull all the kids in a community together. In agriculture and in education, this system has created too many symptoms to deal with. If we continue to focus on categorization and the industrial model, we'll continue to have too many rocks to pick, too many floods to manage, and too many herbicide-tolerant weeds to spray. If you can't tell, I'm a farm kid, and I still like to play farmer when I can. One of the things that I love about farming is it gives me a chance to reflect on the complex beauty around us. We as educators, farmers, citizens, we're blessed with an amazing resource, and we bear an amazing responsibility to cultivate the conditions for growth. But it takes time and it takes courage to build healthy soils. It also takes time and courage to transform our schools. Simply reorganizing schools will only result in confusion, but planning for and building capacity in our educators and changing our mental models to truly feed each other will result in the schools that our kids and communities need and deserve. So we can continue to fight against how learning naturally occurs, or we can embrace change and build capacity to truly inspire each student to use their mind well.